Welcome to our YouTube channel. We're so glad that you found us. Please enjoy this inspiring interview with John Mark Stroud. He was interviewed by Joe Schmitz. If you would like some more information about John Mark, please visit his website at onewhowakes.org. For more information on our non-dual community and the free resources we provide, we invite you to visit our website at awakening-together.org. We hope you enjoy the satsang and hope to see you live in the sanctuary.
Thank you for the lovely welcome and good evening to everyone.
Who is this guy and how did he get in the room?
Yeah.
Welcome, John Mark.
Thank you, Joe.
So happy to have you here and happy to have everyone else here. It's great to see everybody. And I mentioned to John Mark that he's my first. So he said, you never forget your first. And it's going to be in public too. So we're just hopefully going to have as much fun as possible and get into some stuff that may be helpful for all of us. Before we start, I would like to read, and I don't know how much has been said about John Mark before this. We came back, but there's one little paragraph.
Lots.
One little paragraph, an introduction, just to kind of kick things off. And it says, John Mark Stroud began his journey of awakening, immersed in life as a businessman, husband, and father, all with the hallmarks of great success. However, in 2007, he felt moved by some greater force to sell his business and begin the inward search for the peace and happiness that had always eluded him. Almost immediately, he was swept up in a tidal wave of grace and guided to A Course in Miracles, The Way of Mastery, and A Course of Love. Instinctively, he knew this was what he had been searching for. These pathways led him to the direct experience of God's limitless love and peace. That experience of awakening from the dream of separation to the ever-present, perfect awareness of God finally brought the causeless joy and eternal happiness for which John Mark sought. With great joy, he now shares that limitless love with all as one. And I appreciate you sharing it with all and sharing it with us tonight.
Welcome.
Yeah. I do know there are several things we will discuss. One of them won't be what it's like to have just a fabulous frickin' beard, because I have no idea what that is like, nor will I ever.
Someone complimented in the text. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. The other thing, I guess, and I'd mentioned to John Mark before we came back in the room that there were a couple of things I've done as homework that I've looked at of his teachings over the years, beginning with one of the movies from the Movie Watcher thing that John Mark did several years ago, which if no one has been to his website, I would highly recommend that, because I believe there are, I don't know, something like 100 movies on there that John Mark was guided to watch with Yeshua, Inner Wisdom, giving insights through them. And the one I watched again was Shawshank Redemption, which Peter and I watched 2 years ago at the retreat house. And it's just fascinating, the insights that come through there, and then how you can deepen into them even after you've seen it. And then I listened to John Mark was interviewed by Jacqueline in 2019. And that's on our website too, if anyone wants to go back and listen to that fascinating interview. And then the other, Beyond Belief into Presence, which is a series that John Mark had done, which those videos are on his website too. Those are the kind of the three areas, but we may not even get into any of those. John, he left it up to my intuition, and so we're going to see what the heck happens here. That the first thing I would like to ask John is, you end your discussions and your emails with "play well." play well. Can you go into that a little bit?
Certainly. In the midst of my own awakening and my own direct revelatory experiences, I came to realize our utter and absolute invulnerability, that as infinite spiritual beings, we're free to create absolutely anything. And that's the nature of God's love, God's extension of his or her being. Hey, Regina. Good to see you, my friend. And no matter what we do or what we haven't done, we're given utter and absolute freedom to create and experience all things. And when that really settled in my being, I understood that the nature of God and the expansion of consciousness is not towards some future end goal. It is the manifestation, the pursuit of ever greater joy through ever greater and expanding expressions. So knowing that within my being, that's the way I approach my relationship to God or life, whatever you want to call it. And I offer that to others as a play well, have as good a time as you wish, or as lousy a time as you wish. Either one's fine. Some are more fun than others, but
you mentioned expanding in, or the expansion into that. And I also recall in one of these things, they're all kind of mushed up together now up here. So, but there are things that you have said, like when you had your awakening experience, that's when things really started for you. I get the sense that that's when you started really looking at your attachments and the beliefs and started letting go of those sorts of things, rather than it being an ending. It was the beginning. Is that close to correct? Is that?
Yeah, I think all of us here have had some unexpected kind of peak experience that has manifested in our consciousness. And I just love the fact that God gives us peaks, like coming attractions, trailers. We get to have these little experiences, and then we're invited to move from wherever we are to that state of being as an embodiment. And the trailer, if you will, or that peak experience provides a touchstone for us, because rather than moving towards something that we have no idea what it is, we've been touched by grace and have an experience that we're seeking to be able to live in and live as. And the process of coming into the movie of that trailer, if you will, the embodied lived expression, we have to let go of that which is between where we are now and the embodiment of the gift that we've been offered via that revelation. And that was kind of the way my pathway unfolded, which is really wonderful, because you're not just then chasing some idea in your mind. You actually have a knowing within your being based on the experience that you've been touched with grace. And you say, I'd sure rather live in that state of awareness than the one I've been walking around in.
Yeah, thank you. This morning's homily, which was just a beautiful message, but the title of it was The Rhythm of Grace. And Melody, who gave the homily, was talking about, she used a pendulum as a thing, but the pendulum on one end with the insights and the clarity and that sort of thing, and the pendulum on the other end of struggling, confusion, fear, whatever, all of the stuff. But then at some point she recognized that it was all the movement of grace. This was part of the learning process, being there to learn and then going back to the other way. And
beautiful analogy.
It really was. It was great imagery. Do you can you tell us a little bit about how things have unfolded for you since your interview with Jacqueline?
I told you earlier, I think if I watched that, I would be like, who is that guy? I have no idea who that guy is. uh, my journey has continued to expand in ways that are very hard to define or express in ways that are might be understandable. Uh, there's a persistent peace that is not dependent on person, place, thing, event, circumstance. There's a subtle and effervescent flow of joy, not the rah, 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 but just um, I guess I would call it a love of life, a gratitude of life that springs forth from within my being. And the more I've claimed and accepted my oneness with all that is, the more my experiences of that which is far beyond just the physical sensory apparatus has continued to expand and unfold and open. And you might call it growth, but it's really just remembrance. We're just beginning to access our spiritual consciousness, not just operating from our physical or limited consciousness. And that's a wonderful, fun thing to be in openness and discovery about.
I'm trying to imagine, and it's, but
Well,
what fascinates me. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe with my brief description, that's a doorway for you to be touched by grace with an experience that then you don't need to imagine it. You can just
Yeah.
have a taste of it and then decide whether that's something you want to pursue or not.
Thank you. You know, what fascinates me is that you say you probably wouldn't recognize that person from 5 years ago. Yet when I listen to that, you know, there's just so much clarity that comes through and so much wisdom. And I didn't get the sense of any, you know, friction or I don't know, just and yet the unfolding, I guess, would that be a clear word? An unfolding expansion continues to happen, or
I wouldn't really call it an expansion of my unique physical being, which it feels a lot like that at parts of our journey. I would say it's being on the joyride of the expansion of all that is. My consciousness doesn't orient itself through my physical memories and experiences and hopes and wishes so much anymore. Kind of like riding a different roller coaster.
Mhm. How does your consciousness orient itself with the physical body? Is that something you can put into words?
In the same way a carpenter relates to a hammer. It's a tool that's very effective for what that tool was created to be and do and express. But there's perfect awareness that I'm not that tool.
Mm.
But it can be used in magnificent and wonderful ways. I'd love to play pickleball, and that's one of the ways I used it this morning. And we get to all use it in order to have this communion together here. So it's a wonderful tool, and can be used for all kinds of purposes.
Yeah, I had a couple of years ago, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's last year, maybe it's 3 months ago, but somebody put a picture on Facebook, right? Two pictures. And this is what, you know, because I haven't had any interactions with you. I'd heard your name, but there's a picture of you and your face is kind of messed up, bandaged and some blood and maybe a broken nose or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And you were smiling. But what really got me was they took a picture. This is on a pickleball court. They took a picture of where you had face planted, and you and somebody else had put crime scene tape around the body, the outline of the body around where you had landed.
Yeah,
yeah. I thought that's the kind of I'm going to say non-serious, but just open approach to, rather than, oh fuck, my face hurts, you know, and how could I be? It's just, you're sitting there laughing and you got crime scene tape around your body.
Yeah, I've chipped my hammer a little bit.
Yeah. Something you said in the interview with Jacqueline towards the end. Regina had asked you a question about we talked about the videos that were on your website, the practice into presence, beyond belief into presence, and that sort of thing. And something regarding teaching, and your question was, how can you teach someone what they already are? How can you teach someone what they already are? Is that still the feeling you have? Is it?
Of course. I
Yeah.
mean, we can teach facts and figures and details and concepts and beliefs, but there's no need to be taught what we are. If you're fortunate and you're attuned to your inner guidance, and you may run into some folks who can help you remember who and what you truly are. I mean, if teaching would do it, we would all have gotten it already. I mean, how much studying have we done?
Yeah.
It's something, those can be very supportive of coming to realize who and what you are, but they can also be a great encumbrance because we live via the teachings and still don't come to a realization of who and what we are. Because that's all the mind can do. That's all the database it has to work with, is what it's been taught. But beyond that is a state of knowing. I call it gnosis, which is far greater than anything can be taught. But you can, and I've done what I can on my journey to create context in which beings can be supported in coming into direct contact experientially with that. I'll use a simple analogy. You could go get PhDs in sex. You, having never had sex, you could be an expert at it. You could read every book. You could get a PhD. You could have so much information in your mind that you're considered an expert. But if you've never done it, do you really know anything? And when you do you need all the knowledge that your mind learned? So I try and support beings coming into that experience, which is why I call it eternity's embrace, because it's always here, it's always now, it's always available, far beyond conceptually, where they can have that experience within themselves. Because that's the real teacher, is our own direct experience.
Yeah. And eternity's embrace is that's the title of the retreat, upcoming retreat, correct?
Yeah.
Which, is there anything you could share about that? Or is it just going to be whatever happens, happens? Whatever you're guided.
A great title when it dropped in,
title.
and I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah. Going back to where you said the teachings can be a hindrance, become a hindrance. And we discussed just briefly before we came in here about forgiveness.
Yeah.
And how even in the Course, I think Jesus says that that's part of the illusion too. So could you share a little bit about that? I found that so helpful, the way
Sure.
the clarity came to you when it was time to let that go.
Yeah. I assume here most of you have enjoyed the Course in Miracles in some way. Well, I read the passage like you have. Forgiveness is your only purpose here. And I interpreted that very literally as here being physically here in the illusion of earth, in the dream of earth. So my mind grabbed hold of that like maybe a drowning person would grab hold of a life preserver. And I gave all of my being to forgiveness is my only purpose here. But I didn't understand what he meant. I thought I understood what forgiveness was. And my mind was desperately trying to manifest doing forgiveness in order to fulfill my purpose. So much so that towards that end, I became aware that my mind was making shit up to forgive in order to fulfill my purpose. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh. And it was just like a bunch of dominoes. They all kind of started to fall in my consciousness, and I saw past it. I saw the value in forgiveness, but I also saw the burden that misunderstanding it and being so devoted to it that it becomes, because think about it, how can you ever be free of it if it's your purpose to just keep doing it? But what I came to realize that forgiveness is nothing more than release and setting yourself free. When he says in the Course, your sole responsibility is to accept the atonement for yourself, it's to set yourself free. That's really what he means, not some Christian or theological or whatever else. It's to set yourself free from the illusory identity that we've all kind of taken on. So when the dominoes of what he might call forgiveness to destroy fell, and my own mind's conjuring in order to attempt to manifest it, that was quite an illuminous thing to realize my mind could and would even do, was a real stepping stone to setting that aside. Just like if you break your leg, crutches are really helpful for a while. But once your leg is healed, if you keep hobbling around on the crutches, you keep using a tool that you don't need anymore, it does nothing but serve to limit you. I'm not advocating that anybody throw forgiveness out the window. If you need that, if your leg's broken, you need crutches, please use the crutches. But don't become dependent on the crutches.
Did it, John Mark, did it become self-evident to you when that time had come for you?
Yeah, it came in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And what I try and share is I cultivate a absolute necessity to be attuned to your own unique inner guidance, because I can't say this teaching would apply to everybody right now. You ought to throw forgiveness out the window. That wouldn't be right, because for some it may be still very powerful and very helpful. You have to really come into attunement with, what am I being guided to do? Not what some teacher says or what some book says, or what I have to come to know it in my own being. And I cultivated that relationship. And of course, Jesus says, you'll hear guidance as much as you want to hear it, right? So I wanted to hear it above all else. So I began to hear it and know it and come to intuit through all manner of means. Some early on were auditory. Now it's not words anymore, because of course words can be very confusing. I mean, every argument you've ever had with somebody has been over the different definitions of your words, probably. But you come to cultivate that communion, which is always available to you. So living from that, you just know when you're done with something. And we've all had that in situations in our life. You know you're complete with a relationship, or you're complete with a house, or you're complete with where you've been living, or maybe you're complete with something that's been helpful on your spiritual journey. And it feels quite liberating when we let them go, when we're truly ready to let them go.
Thank you. Thank you. That, of course, relying on, and you're familiar enough with Regina and the folks here who, in Awakening Together, we hear that repeatedly. The one teaching that comes over and over is learn to trust your inner guidance, call on your inner guidance. And from what I gather, at some point, I don't know, maybe it was in the beginning of your journey, that you referenced Yeshua as who was guiding you. And then Awakening to the movies, that's the reference you used.
Yeah.
Could you share a little bit about your relationship with that and how it's manifested and matured?
Sure. I did begin to hear words, auditory. I'm kind of clairaudient, or I was. And at first it was just this very generic kind of Holy Spirit voice, because that's where I was kind of reaching out to. Mm-hmm. But at some point, it just felt like it became, I might even get emotional here, much more intimate. And it felt much closer than some Holy Spirit, whatever that means, is kind of out there. So one day in meditation, I got up the courage to say, all right, what's the source of this voice I've been speaking to? And I heard, I am Jesus. And as soon as I heard the word Jesus, I went apeshit. I had incredible amounts of resistance come up. I was like, there's just no damn way. And a lot of what we're taught in the earth about Jesus, that not so attractive kind of stuff. You're going to be like that guy. It's going to be painful in public. So I really, really had a lot of resistance to it, so much so that immediately my consciousness kind of went offline. So I'm doing my processing, trying to integrate what I'd heard. And it was probably 2 or 3 days later where I could actually stop long enough, and I had enough willingness. I had released some of that resistance to kind of tune back in. And when I did, it was like he just kept speaking the exact same sentence where I had cut him off. And he says, but you knew me as Yeshua. And as soon as that hit, I felt such incredible joy, such profound, it's hard to put it into words. But I knew, and I knew that I knew. And I knew there was a long, long history there that got revealed later on. But so at that point, I knew it was much bigger than just some kind of generic voice. But I'll take you a little further. I know that's a lovely story, and we all kind of go, ooh, that's kumbaya kind of stuff. That feels great. But I could just effectively call him up on the phone. And I suspect when Regina was downloading some of her work, it was kind of like that. You just call up, and there it is. So I call up one day, and he says, this will be the last day I take your call like this, because you have made me a substitute for your own being. And if I continue to meet you in this way, it will limit you more than free you. You must now come to where I am. And boy, did my abandonment shit come up again, that I thought was all done and gone. I'm like, wait, I thought this was the whole point. I've got connection. I got access. I'm getting wonderful information. But it was the greatest gift he gave me. It was painful. It was tough love. But I had to come to know that the wisdom that I was asking him for was in my own being, and I didn't need an intermediary. So I had to let go of things and set myself free from things where I was denying my own oneness in that way and projecting onto him a source and a power and a reservoir of wisdom that was not my own. So I'm so glad he cut me off, as painful as it was, ripping the Band-Aid off. But it put me on an entirely different trajectory of my journey that subsequently left all words and concepts and that kind of stuff behind, and allowed me to move into a communion that was much richer than I was requiring it to be limited in my word conversations with him.
Wow. That was communicated so well here. Although there's something that when you talked about how he cut you off, and what I'm feeling here is just a sense of being all alone, just totally lost.
That's
and
the way
all
I
alone.
felt.
Was that
That's exactly the way I felt. But recognize that was my response to what he did. What he was really doing was setting me free and empowering me. I didn't realize at the time, because I had my own abandonment stuff and did feel just like you suggest. But what he was doing was effectively saying, I know who and what you are. You're my equal. Be it.
So then it could become something other than just words you read in a book or a concept. Right?
It had to.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't use words, the limit of words, as the means of interaction anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
There was it comes to mind as an interview from a year or so ago with another spiritual teacher, a guy named Angelo DeLullo, who many of us in the sanctuary listen to and read. But he was being interviewed by two women. And one of the women was talking about archangels, I think. She was praying to Archangel Michael or something like that, and she had symbols of him and things like that. And she said, and Angelo, I think, asked her what she was getting from that, what the purpose was, and she said that she realized that there's probably no Archangel Michael, or maybe not, but she felt comforted by it. She felt comforted by this outside thing, and his response was, can you imagine what it would be like to not need to feel comforted, to not need that thing to come in here and comfort you in any way? And that just, that's beyond anything that I'd ever contemplated before.
Yeah, good for him. He was saying, maybe you should set your comfort crutches down.
Yeah, good. Yeah, yeah.
Well, simply put, when we're immersed in our separation, we look for what we believe we don't have outside of ourselves.
Mhm.
And I quote the Course again, the one lesson we must learn is that there is nothing outside of ourselves. So when we begin to cultivate and become the purveyor within our own being of what we're seeking from archangels or others or teachers or books or ayahuasca ceremonies or whatever, when we begin to fill our cup, if you will, from within, then we begin to realize our oneness with the source of all of that. And Jesus talks to this thing, says, in order to have all, give it. Give freedom to have freedom, give love to have love, as within, so without. So you turn and begin to cultivate that. So if there's a need for comfort, you're the source of that within yourself. Because we don't realize that if we project that outside of ourselves, there's always the fear that that source will disappear. And that's exactly what Jesus was illustrating to me when he said, I'm not going to take your calls like this anymore. There will always, that comfort is there, but if all of a sudden Archangel Michael doesn't respond, oh no, then there's this sense of loss and here we go again. But when you realize the source of that is all within yourself, I would encourage you to be very free with how often and frequently you give of that to yourself. So much so that you'll end up freely giving it to all beings. Just don't be chintzy about it. Be divinely self-fulfillingly selfish. Don't limit that for some crazy something or other.
Well, one of the first thing that comes to mind when you say don't limit that is one of the thoughts that comes in here that gets looked at repeatedly is, what will they think, or how will they view me, that sort of thing. How am I going to be perceived? Which is, when it comes to this, it just seems so silly now that would that somebody would
care about that.
Yeah,
let's just talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, let's do. Go ahead.
That's a big one. Let's all be honest. How many of us what are they going to think? What will they say? Oh my.
Yeah.
Well, how many of you have lied to other people when they ask you what you think or how you feel? Has it not occurred to you that they're probably doing the exact same thing to you? So why bother with any of that? Just give the whole game up. Even if they tell you what they're thinking, that may not be it at all. So why have any dependence or need or expectation or hope or wish for any of that? Again, fulfill that from within yourself, and then you're free. Because the other simple truth is, they're going to think whatever the hell they want to think about you anyway. And how free are you from trying to manipulate it or contort yourself into something to try and get them to feel a certain way? Just give every bit of that up. Every bit of it.
All right.
I mean, it's just, I mean, we start to look at it and you realize how absolutely insane that whole
Yeah.
thing is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then, at some point I started to see how much of the constructing of this seemingly separate self that just keeps in place,
Oh, sure. It's just
it's
it's a
just,
self-perpetuation. It's a
yeah,
suffering perpetuation mechanism
suffering perpetuation. That's good. Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
don't even realize we're doing to ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, there's another wonderful example. How many of you have feared conflict with another being, right? And you actually go through 2, 3, 4, maybe a whole 8-round boxing match in your own mind before you ever get to that being. And then you show up having already fought with them, and there's no real alternative. I mean, and all of that's just completely made up in your mind. Absolutely made up in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than showing up to that being and being open and inviting them to join you in that openness and just see what happens.
Yeah.
And when your own mind realizes the insanity of those things, it will stop. When the mind realizes it is the source of its own harm and suffering, it will stop. And the sooner that realization comes within your own minds, the better. That's that beautiful. The secret to salvation is I'm doing this to myself. Well, I'm going to stop hurting myself.
Yeah. Getting in touch with source, the source of what you are, was my understanding the basis of your Beyond Belief in the Presence, Beyond Belief into Presence series.
Yeah.
And we had discussed towards the end of this doing practice of that, if you would.
Little teaser,
Yeah, a little
trailer.
Before that, when you talked about when the mind realizes, that it'll just stop. This is one thing, and in watching Shawshank Redemption again with the insights that came through you, there was a very simple 3-step, let's say process, but outlined 3 practices that you mentioned in there, and you showed how Andy did it over and over and over again to free him from the prison. I mean, that whole movie was just a beautiful analogy of being freed from being liberated from prison.
Yeah, but let's not forget the falsely accused part.
Yeah.
There's our intractable innocence right up front, right? We've
Yes.
all been falsely accused, or we're falsely accusing ourselves. So
yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember what those 3 were. How about you refresh us?
I will, but before that, that just reminded me, this is towards the end, shortly before Andy tries his escape. So he's matured a lot. And they're in the dinner room, they're in the dining hall. This new inmate has come in, and this new inmate's questioning them about what they've done, and he asked Andy what he's done. And he said, "Don't you know we're all innocent in here?" And kind of laughed. And I think, I would have taken that as he's just joking. He's just screwing with him. But the insight that came through you was Andy had realized, he had gotten that insight that, yes, we are all innocent in here. And he had realized it for himself at that point. And that's when his journey to escaping it again.
Well, what would it take for each of us here together to realize that?
Yeah.
I mean, how might that shift the trajectory of any of our pathways, that realization that we're all truly innocent? And that it's not something that has to be earned or learned through being good to balance some illusory karma scale that you never get a statement in the mail, so you never really know. Get past all that. That it's just implicit in our very existence. I mean, we could have our own Shawshank breakout together if we all come to know that.
Do we still have to crawl through the sewer?
No, unless you believe you do, and then
Yeah.
just please make it a
Yeah.
short one.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So and these practices are very familiar, but seeing that in the context and hearing you mention them during the movie just kind of set it in a little more deeply here. But the first one was witnessing in your own mind the thoughts without identifying, and Andy learned to do that at some point. He realized that things are going on in his mind that, and then at some point learned to not identify. The second is questioning, are these thoughts true? Are they real? And you had mentioned Byron Katie's work, is this true? Is this absolutely true? Even in the in that situation, even with the so-called evidence, of all around him, all of the violence and all of the stuff in the prison, which it wasn't a pretty sight. But, the stuff that was coming in, questioning, is this true? Is this thought true? And then the last thing, which is very helpful to me, is persistence in listening to spirit or listening to intuition, listening to inner guidance.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep persisting. And you had mentioned during the movie that those were the things that had given him the revelation and helped him escape from the prison. So
yeah, sounds pretty wise.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier about there are things that when I asked how the I guess progression or unfolding has happened over the last 5 years since your last interview, or even recently, you mentioned that there are things that may not be understandable. There was something that you mentioned in the interview with Jacqueline that I wrote down because it was not understandable then. Do you mind if I read it to you?
Oh, sure. Let's see if it is now.
Okay, this was towards the end, and I think Regina had asked you how things were for you now, like what your life was like, right? You were talking about playing pickleball and stuff like that. But then you said, I am awake and aware of the multi-dimensional nature of my being. And while my life here is very simple, I'm quite joyfully expressed and expressing in ways where physical limitations are not a barrier. And that's an awful lot of fun. I can have a body or not.
I would say yes, that has continued to expand and be my experience. It's only because we're so habituated to these bodies through these physical senses that we believe we're a singular point of awareness. And we think that singular point of awareness is to the body itself. But when we begin to wake up as awareness, we'll still carry the echo of that awareness is related to this point in time and space, when it's not, because awareness doesn't have any boundaries or limits. Jesus might call it capital M, mind is everywhere. All ideas, all experiences, all expressions are within that. So when you begin to awaken to the nature of awareness being infinite, and you begin to claim your oneness with that, and claiming it is very important, because it's not just believing it, it's claiming it through entering in and experiencing it. It's kind of like if there's a dollar bill on the table and you're like wishing you had that dollar bill. Well, claiming it is going over and picking it up and putting it in your pocket. It's an action. So as I began to claim that, it's almost like Jesus's thing, my Father's house has many mansions. Well, all of a sudden not all of a sudden, but progressively I had access to further and further expressions of being. And initially I believed I needed to be still in meditation and kind of let go of the body in order to do that. But that again was a limitation that I was imposing. So now it doesn't require to lay the body down and depart from the body in order to hold and access multidimensional consciousness. Now, having said that, I'm not saying that's the point of it for anybody. I mean, my beingness is expressed here in this form, in this body for a reason, and trying to be everywhere else other than here is kind of defeating the point. You know, there is a real call for that in our beings, because in a lot of ways we want to get the hell out of here. I mean, it's rough being a body on Earth. It's tough. I mean, you know, they're ceaseless need machines. But once that kind of exploring as an escape went away, and I began to realize that's just the nature of reality, is that it is vastly bigger than we think, and we're not limited to single points of view. I began to be able to hold them and access them consciously without needing to do anything special or lay the body down or be quiet in a particular way. And I also kind of lost the appeal of seeking out there, because I realized the value of truly being present here, knowing the nature of my limitless being. That's the gift to all other incarnate beings, is being fully present here.
Yeah.
Knowing who and what you truly are. And you can't know it for yourself and not equally know it for everybody else. If you think there's something you know that someone else does, that's some mind trick. But to truly know who and what you are, it has to be the same for everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he was pointing at when what does it take to set the whole world free? It takes one, because you realize, oh shit, everybody's that one.
Yeah. Another question came to mind, but I got distracted by Ellie. I don't know, take a minute to say hi to Ellie and Regina. Hi, Ellie.
I apologize. We have thunder, and you know how scary that is.
Oh,
Dog.
Yeah.
no
When
need
I
to
got to stay
apologize.
with Regina, she let me walk Ellie, and Ellie was fine to go like 2 or 3 blocks. And she's like, I don't know who you are. We're not going any further than that.
Yeah. I guess you mentioned something once about, in the Course, Jesus said, this is highly individualized curriculum. And from what I gather, you've mentioned that several times in your talk, that, you know, to honor your own path, to be, you know, my path is my path. In fact, you share that with people, you know, I honor your path. And so I know that can be a hindrance to people that, you know, and look at Regina, well, my life's going different than hers or whatever, but that seems to be a very important message. Just realize to be where we are. And
Of course, I mean, just look at the screen. Imagine just the one physical life that each of these beings have lived.
yeah,
The incredibly, vastly different experiences they've had, the relationships they've had, the choices they've had, the interests they've had, the loves they've had, the traumas and crushes they've had. None of them are the same. I mean, we all might agree, well, you know, that tastes a lot like chicken. There are some universality things, but the uniqueness of our beings is paradoxically the greatest gift that God gave us in God's extension into all of our unique beings. Because oneness is not at all about sameness. It's about allness. And every one of us has, in our own unique ways, given unique expression to the freedom and creative ability that God bestowed on us and its extension into us. And not a one of those is wrong, not a one of those is bad. And that's why consciousness is always expanding, because everybody's doing it in their own unique way. And I know there's a lot of interest in spirituality around the diminishment of self, and trying to be selfless to pursue some imaginary idea of what oneness is. You're going to come to realize the absolute reverence to your own uniqueness. And in that way, you will also honor and extend that to all other beings, because they will all mirror to you a unique version of what's possible and the freedom that God is. And you can't help but have honor and gratitude for that. I can't. Maybe somebody else feels differently about it. But...
Amen. Thank you.
Yeah. And I just want to give Regina props, because, there are a lot of communities out there where it is about sameness of belief, sameness of theology, sameness of thought system, even some that are sameness of...
Oops. Is it me or did John Mark freeze?
Because they don't truly honor the uniqueness of all beings and the utter respect for the God that each being is. And, just look around on the earth, and you can call it an illusion, but is there one type of flower? No. There's a mind-boggling type of beautiful expressions of flowers. Is there one type of tree? Is there one shape of clouds? The very fabric of consciousness of God itself is incredible, infinite diversity. And we all are infinite and diverse expressions, creators, that are part and parcel of every bit of that. Oh my gosh. And what a thing to realize that, instead of trying to make yourself selfless. That's my soapbox for today, I guess. But I celebrate that Regina's a community that she's built honors that in ways that so many others don't. And I just props for that.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Thank you,
That's
Mark.
why I'm excited to come back and hang out with you guys for a while.
Yes, and we're looking forward to that. And the suggestion, which thank you for the suggestion, Shauna. Open it up for questions. If anyone has a question or comment for John Mark, just raise your electronic hand, please. There's Peter.
Hey, Peter, good to see you again, buddy.
Good to see you, John Mark.
I'm looking forward to a hug in a few weeks.
Yes, me too. I'm absolutely thinking of you, and I'm very aware you're coming. And thank you for what you shared, and especially what you wrote about. Not that we are the Course in Miracles, of course, in Love, say it that way. We are not called to be selfless, and that feels so true for me. And they know here in the community, I have a big fight with it actually. If I hear there is no me, my question is actually, first of all, my first question is about when Jesus. You had no direct line anymore with Jesus. I don't know how you word it, but my question is the communication stopped? Is the relationship stopped? Is there a deeper relationship? Or do Jesus not exist anymore? And do we after that not exist anymore? Because I love the uniqueness and the self we are called to. And I believe also there is no death. So there must be something that I will be always that unique, Peter. And I don't know, these are just questions, but there is something in me. If I am unique and my unique way, I'm going my unique way, and it is a gift from God, that is absolutely what I feel. Is that only for this life, or is it also for after what we say death? But if there is no death, there is no after. I am what I am already now, and that is then forever. So that are that are some questions. What is so important for me, and I think it is important, what is the point of it if there is no me? Thank you.
Great questions, Peter. Who else has had Peter's questions run through your mind, your being? I want to be absolutely clear, and please hear these words. You will always and utterly exist. That this whole idea of death is the belief that you will cease to exist. But I want you just to contemplate for a moment being far greater than you know yourself now to be. That in your God's extension as you are within your unique being is the sum total of all infinite power and creative potential. And it uniquely, each of us is that same light of awareness, light of consciousness with free will to choose, create, and experience. So Peter is one of his soul's creations. Just as Jesus was a creation, an extension into the earth of that unique spiritual being. So Jesus is far greater than the body and the personality that we've all come to know and love, or loathe, because there are plenty out there who loathe. That's perfectly okay. So it's important, what I'm trying to stress is here to discover the fundamental nature of your uniqueness, not necessarily and exclusively tied to your physical personality. That is a creation of yours, not your unique ability to create. Because you can continue on the wheel of karma or the wheel of incarnation in life if you're trying to perpetuate one individual personality through growth rather than realizing the uniqueness of your already whole, limitless, and infinite creative being. So honor all your creations. John Mark is a creation of mine, and I've seen many of my other creations which were incredibly diverse and vastly different, which is, I think, wonderful in my being because it wasn't just one continuation. So Peter, you will always have a unique existence. Will it be exclusively Peter? No. Will it be vastly greater? Yes. Will you know and honor the expression that was Peter? Of course you will. But this is far greater than perpetuating our physical personality, body, mind after death. And while we're on the subject, after the doorway of departure, we'll call it, it's also very important to not project onto people who have crossed over how you knew them in their physical personality, because they are far, far greater than that. And if you insist on them showing up to you as a father or a grandparent or whatever, you are imposing on an infinite being the requirement that they meet you in your limitations. I invite you to join them as an infinite and limitless being and truly know your uniqueness. I hope you can get a sense of that within you. Peter, how does that land within you?
I'm very happy with your answer, and it lands in me. To be honest, I asked this question, and I'm so happy with your answer. But I am on this discovery journey, and I know that I am bigger than Peter, but it is not the elimination of Peter. It is included. Peter will always be Peter in a greater me, and I have no words for it. But I am on a journey that I know there is no death. The deepness of the idea there is no death, and that makes me so happy because that I'm here on Earth. It is for a purpose, and it was not easy, and I think for most of us it's not easy on Earth, but but till we discover what the real, I don't know, I don't want to preach or something like that. I just want to express my happiness with this answer, because in the course of love, I read so many times, you are not called to be selfless, and sometimes I hear that there is no self, and then I think no, 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 because that feels not, that feels so, um that feels so missing the whole point. It is a gift from God that I exist, and I'm great, and I want to be grateful for that. And sometimes in the past I was not grateful for it, but I will not repeat that anymore. I want to be grateful for that. Thank you,
Yeah.
John. Thank you.
Well, just by virtue of the fact that we all exist, we are the extension of a conscious choice in God's expression as this infinite beingness that I'm referring to. And we've extended that by creating incarnations into dimensions, into experiences across many, many planes of existence. So we'll always exist, period. End of story. Now that we realize that, play well.
Thank you.
Anyone else have? In what you are. I mean, that's a very popular belief on Earth, right? Very, very popular belief on Earth. Yeah, that's all bullshit too. Okay, Shauna.
Thank you, John Mark. I get to be with you for the in-person retreat here in La Vita, so I hope we get to go out into nature. I can't wait to just have all of us be in nature and see what unfolds. And I'm very excited about being with everyone and being with you here.
Well, great. Maybe you could lead us in that.
Well, we'll see.
Well, I
See
mean, if that's a passion and something you're called to, please show us the way.
You got it. I had two questions, although I'm nervous about asking about this one now. If if you're letting go of self, as in the mental mechanism we think we are, have you let go of that? And my second question is, I heard a story that you were the one that pointed out La Vita to Regina for the retreat house. Is that true?
That is true, yes.
Yay, thank you.
So we'll talk about the mental idea of myself. That is nothing more than a collection that we've garnered in this life that we cloak over our eternal self. That serves to identify us as these bodies, and none of that's wrong or bad, by the way. It's pretty obvious that you would think you're the body. I mean, you think the thoughts that you think are uniquely yours, and clearly the experiences that you have are uniquely yours and not everything else. And the sensory apparatus reports to you that you're absolutely and utterly separate from everyone and everything else.
John Mark.
From or rooted
there we go.
in. And there's no need to deny that aspect at all. It's loved, it's cherished, it's honored, it's fun, it's used as a tool. I don't know. I hope that answers your question. It's kind of hard for me to sometimes remember what that was like because it's not what my experience is.
Yes, thank you, John Mark.
Yeah, you're
Appreciate
welcome. And I look forward to you taking us out in nature. Go ahead and start planning it. Anyone else?
John Mark, if there aren't any more questions, would you like to take us through a little practice?
Sure, let's have an
Meditation.
experiment. Let's see what we can experience. So before I do that, I just want to give the disclaimer. I'm not the authority of you. Please don't make me the authority of you. If anything I have shared or said does not resonate with you, throw it out. Get your own direct guidance. You're the authority of you, and you're the one who chooses for you. Please don't, I could care less about having students or followers or anything like that. Don't take what I say as gospel. Find the gospel within your own being. If what I say points you to it and it supports your discovery, great. If not, forget about it. Forget about it. All right, so Joseph asked me to take you through a quick little introduction after Jesus cut me off, the schmuck that he is, and actually was inviting me into a greater claim and actually real and lasting freedom. I had to begin to cultivate another means of communion. And what I'm going to share with you is some of the things that I was guided through that began to cultivate that extrasensory mechanism of knowing, what I call gnosis. I make a distinction between what you know in your mind, facts, figures, blah, 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 and gnosis that comes. And the simplest example of that is, it's a little crude, please forgive me, but we all have gnosis when you need to go to the bathroom. You don't think about it. It's not because you have beliefs and concepts about it. It's not because somebody's taught you about it. And beautifully, the gnosis comes with the knowing, oh my God, I've got to clinch and waddle immediately, or I can drive another 20 miles, right? And we never argue with this. We don't go, well, that's got to be somebody else's feelings or not my own. So just what I'm pointing to is the ability to come into that level of gnosis, simple, immediate, direct, that also engenders immediate action. So it's not knowing as a mental thing, it's gnosis that begins the movement and expression of your being in whatever way, okay? So that's kind of the distinction between knowing things in our mind and the kind of gnosis that I'm going to point to with our little experiment here. So everybody okay with that? Before we get started, those of you who were so eager to be the best students in school and do really well, just throw that out. Nothing we're going to experience together, you don't have to know any particular modality. You don't have to know any spiritual anything. You already have the faculties within your being, and they're all perfectly operable right now. I'm just going to maybe help you become aware of it. Okay? Sometimes the hardest thing to let go is all of our spiritual stuff, because we've anointed it with so much value. And it is valuable to the mind, but you don't really need it in being. So if it's comfortable for you, close your eyes and take a deep breath. And on the exhale, just become aware of your physical body. And just realize how simple that is. We don't need a 7-step practice. You just know, this is my body. And while you're aware of it, in whatever way is true for you, just express a wee bit of gratitude for it. I know we can be really hard on these bodies. We don't like their shapes or their smells or their whatever. Just for a moment, recognize that your body, whether you have realized it or not, is an utter and perfect master of being present. It is never in last week. It is never in next week. All your mind may do that, but your body is already an effortless, simple master of now presence. And because it is, we're going to use it as a doorway to greater presence. You willing to take this little journey with me? Okay. So without any effort, become aware of your feet. And just notice that immediately when I said that, you didn't have to think about it. Your feet became highlighted in your awareness. No effort at all. No theology required. You just simply know, these are my feet. And without even looking, you know how they're positioned. You know whether you have socks on or not. You just simply know. Now move your awareness to your hands. And again, realize no thought required. You are perfectly aware of your hands and you know exactly what position they're in. So simple, so immediate, so direct. We're just using the light of awareness to contact this master of presence in a conscious way. Now, without any awareness, become aware of your belly, whatever size it is. Mine's a wee bit above average. I don't know about yours, but whatever size it is. And just notice how simple it is to have direct, intimate gnosis of your own physical form. All right, so you can just kind of open your eyes and let go. And let's just do a wee bit of Monday morning quarterbacking about our experience we just had. Was this difficult for anyone? No. Would we agree that all of us on this screen have this inherent ability? Would we also agree that every being on the planet, regardless of their political persuasion or regardless of their religious persuasions or proclivities or their amount of guilt or shame, everybody's got this ability, yeah? Yeah. Okay, who here can explain to me how? Anybody? Anybody? Wait a minute, there's this thing that we all have, and it's really simple and immediate and effortless, and not a one of us know how it works? What the hell's going on here? So let's experiment a little more. You want to be in discovery together? All right. So again, let your eyes close. Take another deep breath. And this time, rather than being aware of a specific part of your body, just hold awareness of your whole form without focusing that light of consciousness, because that's what we did last time. We focused it. So this time, rather than focusing on a particular part of the body, just hold the whole body. And recognize how intimate, how immediate, how simple, and how utterly free of confusion, holding the light of your masterful body of presence in your consciousness, in the light of your awareness. Now, for those of us who joined the Course in Miracles, we became really good at focusing the light of our awareness on our mind. Yeah? And of course, it's never present. It's always in the past or in the future. So we simply let go of our tendency to focus our awareness so much on the string of words through our mind. And we begin to cultivate the ability to bring it to this beautiful body, which is an effortless master of presence. And it doesn't matter whether that body is 1 minute old or 95 years old, they're equal masters of presence. An embodied, real, experiential presence. Beyond our ideas of presence, beyond our concepts of presence, we've all been walking around in a master of presence. So just give your little body a high five for being such a sneaky master your whole life and being perfect at what our minds have been chasing. And notice that without any effort, you have the ability to focus the light of your unique awareness, that's for you, Peter, your unique awareness on wherever you wish. Wonderful thing that we call awareness, or we might call it light, has the ability at will, your unique will, to be focused in different ways. And none of us know how it works. But let's just call that grace. And just explore within your own being, is there any force in existence that can insist that you focus your light in any particular way? Okay. So we've discovered that we have this faculty of light or consciousness. We've discovered it's ever present, right? Everybody's got it, equal for all beings. We have the ability to exercise will, not through thought, but through some other mysterious mechanism, and move and focus that light of awareness wherever we wish, within the scope of our own being. That's pretty cool, isn't it? That's pretty cool. So you want to keep going one more step just for the fun of it? Or should I tease you here and say you got to come to the retreat to get the rest? All right, let's take one more step just for the fun of it, okay? So I'm going to use a little example. I have a cup here, right? And the only way that this cup can exist is that it's occupying a space, right? If there wasn't a pre-existing three-dimensional space, this cup would have no existence, right? Presently, this cup has an Arnold Palmer in it, which I just really enjoy. But let's also recognize that the space, which is providing the ability for this cup to exist, just is creating the existence of it. We could put radioactive waste in this cup, and that space would simply say a silent, yeah, that's good. We could fill it with rocks, and that space would just say, okay, that's good too. I mean, without using words. So what I'm pointing at is there's this unconditional, we could call it love, that is allowing this creation to be expressed in any way whatsoever. But that spaciousness, that consciousness, that potential exists prior to any and all expressions of consciousness, right? So now, close your eyes again, take another deep breath, and just ask yourself, are you having fun? If you're trying to get this right, don't try so hard. Just be open and curious. So just like the cup that I showed you, your physical body is also in the exact same way occupying a space. And that spaciousness is saying a silent yes to Diane and Julie and John and Yolanda, to everyone. And it's holding you exactly as you are. It's not harboring any wish that you be any different than you are. That's all mental stuff. So now let's explore that spaciousness a little bit. So take the light of your awareness just really quickly back to your feet, back to your hands, now back to your whole body. And now, without any effort, without any thought, allow the light of your awareness to focus not on the physical body, but the spaciousness that is present in and suffusing your body, the formlessness that gives rise to the form of your figure. And again, this is not something for the mind to understand. It's just an invitation to experience. Now again, bring your awareness back to the physical body. And just see how easy it is. Yeah, here it is. This is my body. And you're perfectly aware of the edge of your body, yeah? Now, without any effort, allow the light of your awareness, the light of your own unique consciousness, to become aware of the spaciousness that is suffusing your form, not the form itself, but just the spaciousness. And I wonder, is there an edge to it? Is there a hard barrier? What is your gnosis revealing to you? What is your direct experience revealing to you? It's because it's going to be fun. We're going to do one more thing, not to drag you guys out all night. Bring your awareness back to your physical form. And without thought, just see what arises when I ask this question. As you hold your own physical form in your awareness, when was I born? And see what knowing arises. And see that it comes really clearly. Now allow the light of your awareness to release its awareness of the body and just become aware of the space, the spaciousness that is suffusing your physical body. And just let yourself become aware when I ask, when was this spaciousness born? Now, whenever you feel ready, feel free to open your eyes. Anyone want to share anything about your experiences? Yolanda, go ahead.
Well, that was trippy. I mean, I loved that. I don't think I've ever, experienced I don't even know what to call that, exercise or whatever, but presencing exercise or something where maybe I'm just ready for it right now, but like I actually felt, it was a felt understanding of what gnosis, what you mean by that word, gnosis. Ooh. Like even there was a visual aspect to it, like very sci-fi for me, of course. Those are my favorite, things, sci-fi.
And isn't it cool that it
Yeah.
comes uniquely to you in a way that resonates?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. The whole download about that, which was prompted to me by Peter's question, thank you, Peter, really became known to me while we were doing that. My God, it was cool. I sensed the spaciousness, and you said as permeating and sustaining or something like that. It's like I materialized in that spaciousness as you were talking about. Like I could see the body materializing or something. You know what I mean? Like it was just really cool.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And let's all the rest of us, like, that sucks. My experience wasn't like hers. I didn't see sci-fi. I mean, shit, I must be doing it wrong. But that's a beautiful
I'll
point.
have what she's having.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right. I would encourage you to have the buffet that is prepared for you, in ways that uniquely resonate and cognize whatever you need to be in contact with Gnosis. So anyone else want to share before I kind of wrap up? Well, anyone? Okay, so the what I just shared with you was the very initial stages of how I was moved into embodying a formless consciousness and accessing a limitless presence far beyond the structure of my little mind and my physical form. And this is far beyond mind training. It's far beyond concepts and beliefs. It is coming into direct contact with that which is eternal. And that which is eternal contains all wisdom, all power, all knowing, all being, all love. And could it be, friends, that it's been this stinking close the whole darn time? And we've just become so enamored with mind and thought and belief and blah, 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 that we've pulled the greatest illusionary trick on ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's cool that we can do it, but when you're finished, you're probably finished with it. So, Joseph, thank you for letting me be your first. I appreciate that. I hope you'll hold that with you in a long time. And whoever was responsible for reaching out and asking me to participate with you here tonight and invited me to come to La Vita and offer a journey, because this is what we'll do together. Because it bringing you into direct contact with your own eternal nature is the greatest transfigurative, transformative thing, far beyond trading one belief for another, or one memory for another. There's value in that, but that's not what I hope to share with you if you're going to be there to participate. So thank you all for letting me just be uniquely me. I do enjoy cussing occasionally, and I think it serves a wonderful purpose. And if I offended anybody, well, that's your deal.
Thank you, John Mark.
You're welcome.
It was an honor. It was an honor to be here with you.
Thank you for watching our satsang. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to join us live, please remember you can do so by visiting our website at awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary. Again, our website is awakening-together.org. Remember to click the bell for more notifications and subscribe.